that if it's not necessary. And so it is very easy, like I said, to lie to ourselves, but it's not something that you can do when you lay it all out. So that's the first thing I recommend doing. The next thing I recommend is taking an implicit bias test. There is, interestingly enough, there is some pushback in the data community and the science community about whether implicit bias tests are accurate or worthwhile, because the numbers haven't always proven to be replicable, or rather the results, right? But there's not a debate about whether there is bias in hiring or pay. That is not where the debate is. And so a lot of people will hear that and take it and go, see, this is why this test is dumb. But that's not what the scientific community is debating. They're debating if specifically the results of those tests bear out to people who are actually biased on the conscious level. What implicit bias tests are good for, regardless, are making you think hard about any biases that you have, right? And so they are a really good starting place for examining any biases you have and seeing what you can do to work through them. The third is to use your results to highlight your areas of weakness. And so you might be doing a great job at hiring staff, women, but then you're like, oh, but like everyone who works here has to have a college degree. And maybe you haven't said that everyone who works at your company needs to have a college degree. Maybe they just all do. And if they just all do, then it probably is a requirement that you have internally that you haven't noticed. And that's not necessary to roast coffee, to sell it, to make it, because I don't remember taking a barista skills course in the 30 seconds that I went to university. So you want to use those results to highlight your areas of weakness. Sorry, I jumped ahead a sec. And then, that's definitely not what I wanted to do. All right. But once you do highlight those areas of weakness, make a plan to address them. And so you don't have to do it, all at once, but do see like, oh, there are gaps here and there are people there are views that we're missing that could really make a difference in our company. How do we go after that? I always recommend diversity and inclusion staff training. And that is for the staff, but it's also for employers. Like I said, we're all human beings. We are all prone to a bias of some sort. But also, something I've not talked about, because I'm, this is specific to the coffee industry, but for those of you who have retail staff, patriarchy is real, racism is real. Those are things that numbers say, not just me. And your staff, if they are dealing with the public, they are 100% dealing with those things. And if you can't train your staff to see that for what it is, or if you can't train yourself, so you might say, man, Tymika always has a bad attitude at 3 p.m. when this guy comes in, and this guy's been asking me out for weeks, so yeah, when I see him, I'm not gonna be nice to him. And if I don't feel like comfortable sharing that with my boss, and I was very fortunate, like when I was working for Stumptown, the area of the country I was in had all of these things. And I can tell you, it's the only reason why I'm here, right? Because I felt really comfortable, even though I was at that time the only Black woman who worked at Stumptown, but I was never made to feel uncomfortable, like I didn't belong, like it would stop me from getting promotions. And I don't take that for granted, because I've seen work environments where that's not the case. And I think very often, like, coffee has really changed my life, and where would I be if those ladies weren't the ones who hired me, and if they didn't take me seriously, and if they couldn't see my value, and also could respect when guys were being creepy to me behind the bar, and that I would be in a crappy mood, or if somebody says something weird or racist, I didn't have to pretend that it didn't happen, right? And all of those things are the reason why I get to continue to work in coffee. And so it's worth doing, certainly the diversity and inclusion staff for training, but also for yourself, because these are the realities of what your staff have to deal with, and it's good for you to know that they're true. And if they do feel like they're true, like I certainly felt like my bosses believed me and understood me, I gave literally everything I had to that job. And so then the last thing I recommend is implementing intervention training, and that goes hand in hand with what I said for the diversity and inclusion training, right? So like, you need to teach your male staff to intervene if someone is being weird and creepy to a woman barista, or if it's a customer, if it's a coworker. Because these are all things, before you can talk about not wanting a knowledge drain, before you can talk about like setting things up so that people don't, people want to stay with your company. These are the reasons why people leave companies. They might never tell you, but I have spoken to so many women and people of color who are like, yeah, I mean, I just don't work in coffee anymore because it was just too hard. Or I don't work at that place anymore. I like talk to their boss and their boss is like, we're really sad to lose her. She was great. And she was like, yeah, all customers were creepy to me all the time and no one did anything about it. And so that is something that is really important, because you do lose really good staff. And I don't think you lose staff as often for these other things as much as not investing in your employees, not creating an environment that feels inclusive and good to them, and not working your hardest to maintain that and stay on top of it. There is so much, and there's so many issues, frankly. Like Gail brought up a really good one yesterday, where we will need all hands on deck, where we need real innovation to push through whatever's going on with the market, to like move things forward for producers. And it's not gonna come from just the same group of people. It's not gonna come from me who was educated, not all gonna come from me who was educated in the West, right? You need people who have context for different kinds of experiences and who can use those to really push our industry forward. And that's all I got.
Thank you so much. Please.